18 years. 18 years I raised that boy. Fed him, rocked him to sleep, nursed him through sickness, wiped away his tears. I thought he was my son, but one day, a DNA test shattered everything. The boy I raised wasn't mine. My son was the other one. The one my neighbor had been raising, and when I found out how it happened, when I discovered that woman deliberately switched our babies, my whole world fell apart. Listen, baby. Come close. I need you to hear something that's going to shake you to your core. Something that's going to make you question everything you think you know about trust, about motherhood, about the people living right next door to you. Because what I'm about to tell you, honey, it's the kind of nightmare you don't wake up from. The kind that rewrites your entire history. Makes you look back at 18 years of memories and wonder which ones were real and which ones were built on a lie. And I need you to stay with me till the very end, because this story doesn't go where you think it's going. It starts in a hospital. It starts with two women giving birth on the same night. It starts with a choice one woman made that destroyed two families. My name is Eve. I'm 58 years old now, but when this story begins, I was 40. Young enough to still feel invincible. Old enough to know better. I'd been trying to have a baby for 7 years. 7 long, heartbreaking years of negative pregnancy tests, failed fertility, treatments, miscarriages, and doctors telling me it might never happen. Every month, I'd hope. Every month, I'd be crushed. My marriage was falling apart under the weight of it. My husband couldn't handle the disappointment anymore. Couldn't handle watching me break down every time I got my period. Maybe it's not meant to be, he'd say. But I couldn't accept that. I wanted a child more than I'd ever wanted anything in my life. And then, finally, I got pregnant. It felt like a miracle baby. Like God had finally heard me after years of silence. I carried that baby with so much love, so much hope, so much gratitude that my body was finally doing what it was supposed to do. I talked to him every day, sang to him, rubbed my belly, and whispered promises about the life we'd have together. And when I went into labor on a cold November night, I thought, this is it. This is the moment my life begins. The hospital was chaos that night. Understaffed. Overwhelmed. There was a storm outside. Ice on the roads, accidents everywhere. The ER was packed. And the maternity ward? Baby. They were scrambling. I remember nurses rushing past my room, voices raised, alarms going off somewhere down the hall. One of the nurses apologized. We're short-staffed tonight. Flu season hit us hard, but don't worry, we're taking care of you. I didn't care about any of that. I was focused on one thing, bringing my baby into this world. The labor was brutal. 36 hours of agony. Contractions that felt like they were tearing me in half. My husband held my hand, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The fear. You can do this, he kept saying. Just a little longer. But when I finally heard that cry, that tiny, perfect, beautiful cry, everything else disappeared. All the pain, all the fear, all the years of waiting, gone. It's a boy, the nurse said, placing him on my chest. A boy, my son. I looked down at him, this tiny, wrinkled, perfect creature, and I felt my heart crack wide open in a way I didn't know was possible. Hi, baby, I whispered through my tears. I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long for you. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a head full of dark hair. And when he looked up at me with those brand new eyes, I swear to God, baby, I felt like I'd known him forever. Like he'd always been mine. In the room next to mine, another woman was giving birth. Her name was Diane. Diane Patterson. I'd met her once before, in the hospital parking lot a few weeks earlier. We'd both been going to prenatal appointments. White woman, maybe 35, blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Cold blue eyes that looked right through you. She'd smiled at me, One of those tight, polite smiles that didn't reach her eyes. The kind of smile white women give black women when they want to seem nice but don't actually care. "When are you due?" she'd asked. "November 15th, I'd said, rubbing my belly. "Me too." She'd looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my stomach. "First baby?" "Yes. You?" "Third." She'd said it with this strange edge to her voice. Like she was exhausted, resentful, almost. "Oh, congratulations," I'd said. She'd shrugged. "Thanks. My other two are girls. I'm really hoping for a boy this time." There was something about the way she said it, something desperate, almost obsessive. But I just smiled and said, "I hope you get what you want." We'd made small talk for another minute, then gone our separate ways. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back now, baby, looking back, I wonder if that's when she started planning it. If that's when she looked at me, at my belly, at my joy, at my hope, and decided she wanted what I had. Diane gave birth the same night I did. About 2 hours after me. She had a boy, too. I didn't know that then. Didn't know anything about her situation. All I knew was that I had my son, and nothing else in the world mattered. They took him to the nursery after about an hour so I could rest. Standard procedure, they said. I didn't want to let him go. Didn't want him out of my sight for even a second. But I was exhausted. Could barely keep my eyes open. My body felt like it had been hit by a truck. "We'll bring him back in a few hours for feeding," the nurse assured me. "You need to sleep, Mama, trust me." So, I let them take him. Watched them wheel that little bassinet out of my room. And I fell into the deepest sleep I'd had in months. When I woke up, there was a baby in the bassinet next to my bed. My baby. Or so I thought. The nurse brought him to me for feeding, and I held him close, breathed in that sweet newborn smell. Started to nurse him. And that's when I noticed. He looked different. Not dramatically different. Not in a way that set off alarm bells. But different. His nose seemed a little wider than I remembered. His skin tone a bit lighter. His hair texture slightly different. I stared at him, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with what I remembered. But then I told myself I was being ridiculous. I'd only held him for an hour before they took him, and I'd been exhausted, in pain, overwhelmed. Babies change in the first few hours, right? Their features shift, their coloring adjusts. Plus, the lighting in the delivery room had been harsh. Maybe I just hadn't seen him clearly. So I pushed the feeling aside. Told myself I was being a paranoid new mother. And I fed my baby. My son. Or the boy I thought was my son. I named him Marcus. After my father, who'd passed away 2 years before and never got to see me become a mother. Marcus Thompson. I took him home 3 days later, and my life became a beautiful blur. Of diapers and midnight feedings and overwhelming, all-consuming love. He was a good baby. Quiet. Calm. Easygoing. Barely cried. Slept through the night by 6 weeks. Everyone said how lucky I was. "You got an angel baby," my mother told me. And I felt lucky. Blessed. Like after 7 years of struggle, God had finally given me exactly what I needed. But there was always this tiny voice in the back of my mind. A whisper I couldn't quite silence. Something's not right. I'd look at Marcus and search for traces of myself, of my husband, of my family. And I'd find nothing. He didn't have my eyes, or my smile, or my father's nose. He didn't have my husband's build, or his ears, or his hands. "He must take after your side," my husband would say when I mentioned it. "Maybe," I'd say, but I didn't believe it. Because I'd seen pictures of everyone in my family as babies. And Marcus didn't look like any of them. Still, I pushed it down. Told myself genetics were unpredictable, that babies sometimes looked like distant relatives you'd never even met. That love was more important than resemblance anyway. Diane lived 2 houses down from me. I didn't know that at first. I was too caught up in new motherhood to pay attention to my neighbors. But one day, about 3 weeks after Marcus was born, I was walking him in his stroller when I saw her. She was standing in her driveway, loading a car seat into her minivan. And when she looked up and saw me, something flickered across her face. Something I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Guilt? Fear? It was gone in an instant, replaced by that same tight smile. "Eve?" she called out. "Is that you?" I stopped, squinted against the sun, recognized her. "Diane, hi. I didn't know you lived here. Small world, right?" She walked over, her eyes immediately dropping to the stroller. "I heard you had your baby. Congratulations." "Thank you." "You too." She bent down, peering into the stroller at Marcus. And baby, the way she looked at him. It was intense. Studying, like she was searching for something. She stared at him for a long moment without saying anything. "He's beautiful," she finally said, her voice strange, flat. "Thank you." "What did you have?" "A boy." She straightened up, not meeting my eyes. "His name is Christopher." "That's wonderful. How's he doing?" "He's..." She paused, swallowed hard. "He's fine. Just fine." There was something off about her tone. Something bitter. But before I could ask, she was already backing away. "Well, I should get going." "Nice seeing you, Eve." "You too." But she was already walking back to her house, moving fast. Almost running. I stood there on the sidewalk, confused, watching her disappear inside. And that whisper in my head got a little louder. Something's not right. Over the next few months, I'd see Diane around the neighborhood. At the grocery store. At the park. Walking past my house. And every single time, she'd find a way to talk to me. To ask about Marcus. How's he sleeping? Is he eating well? Has he hit any milestones yet? What's his temperament like? At first, I thought she was just being friendly, making mom talk the way new mothers do. But then it started feeling invasive, obsessive. She'd show up at my door unannounced, asking to see him. "I was just in the neighborhood," she'd say. "Thought I'd pop by." She'd offer to babysit, even though we barely knew each other. "I have experience with babies," she'd insist. "And you look like you could use a break." She'd comment on his features in this weird, intense way that made my skin crawl. "He has such unusual eyes," she'd say, staring at him. "His hands are so delicate, almost feminine. He's so calm, so docile." And then, one day, she said something that made my blood run cold. "He doesn't really look like you, does he?" I froze. "Excuse me?" "Oh, I don't mean anything by it." She laughed, but it sounded forced. Cruel, even. "Babies just, they don't always look like their parents right away. Sometimes they favor other relatives, distant relatives." "He looks like my father," I said firmly, even though I wasn't sure that was true. Of course he does." She smiled that tight smile. "I'm sure you see what you want to see." What did she mean by that? "I'm sure you see what you want to see." I replayed that conversation in my head for days, weeks, months. And that whisper got louder. Something's not right. Something's not right. Something's not right. Marcus grew into a toddler, then a child, then a teenager. And with every year that passed, he looked less and less like me. He was pale. I was dark-skinned. He was thin and delicate. I was curvy and strong. He was quiet and introverted. I was outgoing and loud. He loved art and music. I loved sports and the outdoors. We were nothing alike. My marriage fell apart when Marcus was 3. My husband couldn't handle the distance he felt from our son. "I don't connect with him," he admitted one night. "I don't feel like he's mine." That's a horrible thing to say. I know. But it's true, and I think maybe we need to get a paternity test. Absolutely not, Eve. I said no, he's your son, our son. And I won't let you hurt him by questioning that. But the seed was planted. And even though my husband never brought it up again, I could see it in his eyes every time he looked at Marcus. Doubt. We divorced 6 months later. Meanwhile, I'd see Christopher around the neighborhood. Diane's son. The boy she'd had the same night I had Marcus. And baby? Every time I saw him, my heart would skip a beat. Because he looked like me. Not exactly. Not in an obvious way. But in small ways that added up. The shape of his face. The way he smiled. The curve of his nose. He had my father's eyes. My mother's hands. My walk. My laugh. My expressions. I'd watch him play basketball in his driveway and see myself at that age. I'd hear him talking to his friends and hear my own voice. And that whisper became a scream. Something's not right. Something's not right. But I couldn't say anything. Couldn't voice my suspicions. Because what would I even say? I think my neighbor switched our babies at birth? People would think I was insane. Hell, I thought I was insane. So I kept quiet. Kept raising Marcus. Kept loving him as fiercely as I knew how. And kept watching Christopher from a distance, wondering what it would feel like to raise a child who actually looked like me. The truth came out the summer Marcus turned 18. He was applying to colleges. One of them required extensive medical records because he had some health issues. Nothing major, but enough that doctors had been monitoring him for years. Asthma, allergies, a heart murmur. And one of his specialists recommended genetic testing to rule out certain hereditary conditions. It's just precautionary, the doctor assured us. But given his medical history, it would be good to have a complete genetic profile. So we did the test. Marcus, me, and his father, my ex-husband. We all gave samples. Standard procedure. And then we waited for the results. The call came 3 weeks later. I was at work when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Thompson? This is Dr. Rivera from Gene Lab Diagnostics. Yes, hello. Do you have Marcus's results? There was a pause. A long, heavy pause that made my stomach drop. Mrs. Thompson, I need you to come into the office as soon as possible. There's something we need to discuss. My heart started pounding. Is something wrong? Is Marcus sick? Does he have a genetic condition? No, it's not a medical issue. But we need to speak with you in person. Today, if possible? Can you at least tell me? In person, Mrs. Thompson, please. I left work immediately. Called Marcus. Told him to meet me at the lab. Drove there with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Cancer. Heart disease. Something fatal. But when I walked into Dr. Rivera's office and saw her face, I knew it was something else. Something worse. She gestured for me and Marcus to sit. Closed the door. Took a deep breath. Mrs. Thompson, Marcus, I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to say it. The genetic testing shows that you are not Marcus's biological mother, and Mr. Thompson is not his biological father. The room spun. What? The DNA results are conclusive. There is no genetic match between either of you and Marcus. Marcus looked at me, his face pale. Mom? What is she talking about? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. That's impossible, I finally managed. I gave birth to him. I was there. I held him minutes after he was born. I understand this is shocking, Dr. Rivera said gently. But the science is clear. Marcus is not your biological child. Then whose child is he? We don't know. But I strongly recommend contacting the hospital where you gave birth. This suggests there may have been a mix-up. A mistake? A mix-up. A mistake. 18 years. 18 years I'd raised a child who wasn't mine. I don't remember leaving that office. Don't remember walking to my car. Don't remember driving home. All I remember is Marcus sitting beside me in the passenger seat, silent, staring out the window with tears streaming down his face. And me, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, trying not to scream. When we got home, Marcus went straight to his room, slammed the door, and I sat on the kitchen floor, phone in my hand, staring at nothing. 18 years. 18 years of feeding him, clothing him, staying up all night when he was sick, helping him with homework, teaching him to ride a bike, attending every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every moment of his life. And he wasn't mine. I called the hospital the next day. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. I need to speak to someone about a birth that happened 18 years ago, I told the receptionist. Ma'am, I'm going to need more information. I just found out the baby I took home wasn't mine. I need answers. Now? That got their attention. They transferred me to risk management, then to legal, then to some administrator whose voice was carefully neutral, professionally concerned. Mrs. Thompson, these allegations are very serious. We'd like to look into this matter, but we'll need documentation. The DNA test results, your birth records, any information you have. I have everything. When can we meet? Let me check our schedule. Today. I need to meet today. There was a pause. This afternoon, 2 o'clock. I walked into that meeting with a folder full of documents and rage burning in my chest. They sat across from me. 3 people in expensive suits with sympathetic faces that meant nothing. Mrs. Thompson, we've reviewed your file. You gave birth on November 15th, 18 years ago. Is that correct? Yes. And you're claiming the infant you took home was not your biological child? I'm not claiming anything. I have DNA proof. I slid the test results across the table. They looked at them for a long time. Too long. This is highly unusual, one of them said. Mix-ups like this are extraordinarily rare. But they happen? In theory. But our protocols are designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation. ID bracelets, footprints, multiple checks. Then how did it happen? My voice cracked. How did I take home the wrong baby? We don't know yet, but we're going to investigate. We'll pull the records from that night, interview staff, review security footage if it's still available. If it's still available, it's been 18 years. We understand your frustration. You don't understand anything, I said, standing up. You don't understand what it feels like to look at your child and realize they're not yours. To question every moment you've shared. To wonder where your real child is and who's been raising them. The investigation took 3 agonizing weeks. 3 weeks of waiting. 3 weeks of looking at Marcus and seeing a stranger. 3 weeks of barely sleeping, barely eating, barely functioning. Marcus stopped talking to me. He'd leave the house early in the morning and come back late at night, avoiding me. When we did see each other, he couldn't look at me. Marcus, baby, we need to talk about this. Don't call me that. What? Baby. Don't call me baby. I'm not your baby. That's the whole point, isn't it? The words cut like knives. Marcus, you're still my son. No, I'm not. His voice was cold, distant. I'm some stranger's kid that you accidentally raised, and somewhere out there is your actual son who you've never met. That doesn't change how I feel about you. It changes everything, Mom. He said, Mom, like it was a curse. Everything. Finally, the hospital called me back. Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come in. We've found something. My heart stopped. What? What did you find? In person, please. They sat me down in the same conference room. Same 3 people in suits. But their faces were different now. Guilty. Afraid. Mrs. Thompson, one of them began. We've completed our investigation, And we've confirmed that there was indeed a mix-up the night you gave birth. My hands started shaking. We've identified another infant born the same night. A male infant, approximately the same weight and height as your son. Who? My voice was barely a whisper. Who has my son? They exchanged glances. A family in your area. We've contacted them, and they've agreed to DNA testing. What family? The Patterson family. The room tilted. Patterson. Diane. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Mrs. Thompson. That woman lives 2 houses away from me. She's lived there for 18 years. Are you telling me she's had my son this whole time and I didn't know? We don't have all the answers yet. When will you have answers? When will you test her son? Tomorrow. We've already made arrangements. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, staring out the window toward Diane's house. 2 houses away. My son had been 2 houses away for 18 years. I'd seen him grow up from a distance, watched him play basketball, heard his laughter, walked past him dozens, maybe hundreds of times, and never knew. The DNA results came back 3 days later. Christopher Patterson was my biological son, the child I'd given birth to, the baby they'd placed on my chest for those few precious minutes, and then took away, and gave to someone else. But here's the thing, baby. Here's the part that made everything so much worse. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. Diane had switched us on purpose. The hospital's investigation revealed the truth. Diane had worked at that hospital, not in the maternity ward. She'd been a nurse in the cardiac unit. But she'd been fired 2 years before we gave birth. Fired for erratic behavior, for falsifying patient records, for stealing medication. There were notes in her file about mental instability, about her obsession with having a perfect child. She already had 2 daughters. Both had severe developmental disabilities that required constant care. And when she got pregnant for the 3rd time, she'd become fixated on having a healthy son. A normal son, as she'd written in her journal. A journal the hospital found and turned over to investigators. But when Christopher was born with minor health issues, nothing serious, just some respiratory problems and a slightly irregular heartbeat, she'd lost it. She'd looked at him in the nursery and decided he wasn't good enough. He was flawed, defective, another burden she couldn't handle. And then she'd looked at Marcus in the bassinet next to Christopher. Perfect, healthy, quiet, everything she wanted. So she'd used her old hospital credentials, they hadn't deactivated them yet, to access the nursery after hours. And she'd switched the ID bracelets, took Marcus, left Christopher, and walked away like nothing had happened. I confronted her, showed up at her door at 6 in the morning with police officers and lawyers and rage burning through every cell in my body. She opened the door in her bathrobe, coffee in hand, and the moment she saw me, she knew. "You need to leave," she said, trying to close the door. But I pushed it open. "You switched them," I said, my voice shaking. "You looked at our babies and you deliberately switched them." She didn't deny it, just stood there, arms crossed, face blank. "He was sick," she said flatly. "Your son was sick. I couldn't handle another sick child. I already had 2. So, you stole mine? I gave you a healthy baby instead. You should be grateful." I lunged at her. The officers had to pull me back, had to hold me while I screamed and cried and tried to break free. "You took 18 years from me," I sobbed. 18 years with my son. You had no right. "I had every right," she said coldly. "I was doing you a favor. Christopher would have been a burden. Marcus was a gift." "You're insane." She smiled. Actually smiled. Maybe. "But you can't prove I did it on purpose. It'll just look like a hospital mistake. An unfortunate accident. And what are you going to do? Take Christopher away from me after all these years? He doesn't even know you." She was partially right. The hospital's investigation found evidence that she'd accessed the nursery, that she'd been alone with both babies, that she'd had means and opportunity. But proving intent? That was harder. Her lawyer argued that she'd been suffering from postpartum psychosis, that she hadn't been in her right mind, that even if she had switched the babies, it wasn't premeditated. The district attorney considered charges: kidnapping, child endangerment, fraud. But in the end, they decided there wasn't enough evidence for a criminal trial. Too much time had passed. Too many records had been destroyed. And the boys, Marcus and Christopher, were legal adults now. The decision of what to do next would be theirs. I had to tell Marcus the whole truth. Sat him down and explained everything. About Diane, about the switch, about Christopher. He stared at me for a long time after I finished. "So the woman down the street deliberately stole you from me," he said quietly. "Yes. And you've known for weeks and didn't tell me?" I needed to be sure. "You needed to be sure?" He stood up, pacing. "Mom, my entire life is a lie." "It's not a lie, baby." "Stop calling me that." He whirled around, tears streaming down his face. "I'm not your baby. I'm not your son. I'm just some kid you got stuck with because a crazy woman decided to play God." "Marcus, did you ever love me, or were you just pretending because you didn't know any better?" The question shattered me. Of course I loved you. I love you. DNA doesn't change that. It changes everything. He grabbed his jacket. "I need to get out of here." "Where are you going?" "I don't know. Anywhere but here." He left. And I sat in that empty house, wondering if I'd lost him forever. I also had to meet Christopher, my biological son. The hospital arranged it, a controlled meeting with therapists present. I walked into that room, and there he was, 18 years old, tall, strong, athletic. He had my father's face, my mother's smile, my eyes, my son. But when he looked at me, there was no recognition, no connection, just confusion and resentment. "So you're my birth mother," he said, the words awkward in his mouth. "Yes. And you didn't know? For 18 years? Not until 3 weeks ago." He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "This is insane." "I know. What do you want from me?" The question hung in the air. What did I want? I wanted to hold him, to know him, to make up for 18 years of missed moments. But I couldn't say that, because it wasn't fair. He didn't know me, didn't owe me anything. "I don't want anything," I said finally. I wanted to meet you, to see that you're okay." "I'm fine." His voice was hard, defensive. I had a good childhood, a good mom. Each word was a knife. "I'm glad," I managed. "Look, I know this isn't your fault, but it's not my fault either. And I don't know what you expect from me. You're a stranger. I know. Diane is my mom. That's not going to change just because some DNA test says otherwise." I nodded, even though it felt like dying. "I understand." The months that followed were the hardest of my life, baby. Marcus moved out, got his own apartment, started college across the state. We talked occasionally, but it was strained, painful. He was trying to figure out who he was, now that everything he'd believed about his identity had been shattered. Christopher agreed to occasional meetings, but kept me at arm's length. He was polite, but distant. Called me Eve, never Mom. And Diane? Diane got away with it. No criminal charges, no consequences. She still lives 2 houses down from me. Still acts like nothing happened. It's been 5 years now. Marcus is 23. We talk more often these days. He's in therapy, working through everything. Last year he told me, "You're still my mom. DNA doesn't change that. You raised me. You loved me. That matters more than biology." I cried when he said that. Christopher and I have a relationship now too. Not mother and son, we missed that chance. But something. A friendship, maybe? He comes over for dinner sometimes. Tells me about his life. We're building something new. Something that's ours. It's not what I wanted. But it's something. People ask me sometimes, do you regret raising Marcus? Never. Not for 1 second. Those 18 years were real. Every moment, every memory, every ounce of love, that was real. And nothing can take that away from me. Christopher is my biological son. But Marcus is my son too. Not by blood, but by choice, by love, by showing up every single day. And that matters just as much. Diane developed dementia 2 years ago. I should feel satisfaction, but I just feel empty. Because she doesn't remember what she did, doesn't remember the lives she destroyed. And somehow, that feels like the cruelest joke of all. Baby, I'm telling you this story because I need you to understand something. Family isn't just about DNA. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when everything falls apart. I lost 18 years with Christopher, but I gained 18 years with Marcus. Both of those truths exist at the same time. And I've learned to live with that. Marcus got married last year. At the wedding, he gave a speech about family and love. And he looked right at me and said, DNA doesn't make you a mother. Love does. And you're the best mother I could have asked for. I sobbed. Everyone sobbed. Because in that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Christopher was at that wedding too. He and Marcus had grown close over the years. Brothers by circumstance, by shared trauma, by choice. And when Christopher gave his toast, he said, I gained a bonus mom and a brother from this mess. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. So if you're going through something that's shattered your understanding of family, hear me. You get to redefine what family means. You get to choose love over biology. You get to build something beautiful from something broken. And that choice, that brave, beautiful choice, that's what makes you human. Final reflections. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up when everything falls apart. The cruelest betrayals don't always get justice, but you can still find peace. Love is a choice you make every single day, and every time you choose it, you win. You can grieve what you lost and be grateful for what you have. Both are true. DNA tells you where you came from. Love tells you where you belong. The relationship you build matters more than the one you were supposed to have. Sometimes the hardest thing is loving someone when the foundation has cracked. But that's when love matters most.